Okay, so in this video we're going to look at how we can tell if a circle and a rectangle are touching. So it's kind of in our series of seeing if two things are overlapping. In this case, I'm going to have my ball, as soon as it gets close to that rectangle and touches it, it's going to turn red. So this one's a little bit, we're going to use some fancy tools for this one. Not super fancy, but we're going to use a couple of processing tools that are going to help us out here a little bit. To visualize what we're going to do, I'm going to add in a little dot on our screen here. So we're going to see that little blue dot. So what that blue dot is on the rectangle, and it's trying to find the closest point on the rectangle to the center of our circle. So essentially what we're looking for is, and this is, I'm drawing this blue dot to illustrate, we can see basically we're trying to find that point, and then we're measuring the distance from that point to the center of the circle to see if the distance is less than the radius of the circle. So there's some similar stuff to trying to find like the see if two circles are overlapping. We're checking the distance between 2 points, checking to see if it's less than the radius of a circle. So similar kind of ideas in here. Our challenge is really in like finding that point. What point is closest to it? And we're going to use a tool called Constrain to get this done. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about what Constrain is doing and how we're using it here. But yeah, we can see in this, we're just kind of looking for, like, for right now, we can see like the closest point here. Well, I guess like we could start first when we think about the constraint. If we're going to try and find the point that's closest to the center of our circle, we could look at the x and we could look at the y. In this case, we want to say for our x value, well, the range of x values could be all the way from like the left side of the circle, or excuse me, the left side of the rectangle to the right side. Those are a range of possible x values that we could have. Basically what we're looking for is try to find the value that's closest to my circle's x that's still within the range of this rectangle. And that's what we're going to use a tool called Constrain to find that value. What is the x value that's within the rectangle but closest to my circle center? And we're going to do the same thing for our y. We're going to try and find the y. So if we look up and down at our y value, we're going to find the value in our rectangle stays within the rectangle but closest to the circle. What's helpful about that is like as long as it stays within the rectangle, then we can see it's going to only go up so far. Our dot, our closest point to the circle, is only going to go up so far. It's going to stay within the rectangle. Okay, so we're going to kind of go up and down this. And the reason for that is like when our circle gets close, we want to try and find that closest point, the closest point to our circle, because that's going to where the circle is just going to meet. Okay, so let's get into our code a little bit for how we're going to get this done. Okay, so let's take a look at our code for right now. There are these sets of values. You just have some stuff for our circles, stuff for our rectangles. We're doing text size, actually we don't need that. And then we're just updating our circle x to be whatever the mouse is, circle y, whatever the mouse is, drawing a rectangle, drawing a circle. And if we run that, that's kind of just our basic default kind of setup here, not doing any intersections. What we want to do is we want to start finding like what is a position that's closest to these points. So we're going to use a tool called Constrain, and I think maybe to begin with, let's just print this out. We'll see this in the terminal. We can see kind of what it's doing, and then we'll write a method that uses it. So we're going to write Constrain. Constrain is going to take in 3 values. The first value is the number you're trying to target. So in this case, we're going to say it's going to be like circle x is the number we're trying to get close to. We're trying to find the closest value to. And the second 2 values, you can see it in the prompt here, the low and the high. It's like, what is the range of values that I have to select from? And in here, I'm going to say it's my rectangle x. It's kind of the leftmost value. And my rightmost value is going to be rectangle x plus rectangle width. Okay. Now if we go into our draw, we can see 50. All right, so we can see here, 120 is going to be probably the rightmost side of our rectangle. So if we look at x as we go across, again, we're not dealing with y at all. We can see now the closest value is getting less and less, because that's the value that's closest to our x. Let's see, we could maybe do a little bit more in here. We could say something like closest value, x value on rect is something like that. And then we could say maybe also we could say print line like circle x is circle x, something like that maybe, so we can really visualize this and see what's going on here. Oh, it's really spamming out like crazy. I'll pause it here in a second. So we can see what the circle value is there. Let's stop it for a second. We can see it kind of sweep across the front here, and then we'll close it out. And you can see here, these are all the circle x values. This is the closest value on our rectangle. We zoom up. Oh, it's really going fast. All right, we can see over here, like as our circle x gets lower, the closest value on our rectangle is going to be 50. That's going to be the smallest possible value, 50, because that's what our rectangle's like top left value is. That's our rectangle's x value is 50. Okay, so we could do the same thing. So this is a way of finding a value. What's the value within this range? What's the one's closest to our circle X? Okay, so now what we're going to do in here is we're going to make another method like we've done for previous videos, like doing rectangle overlaps. We could say something like circle overlaps rect. And we're going to do some stuff like that. We're going to say if the circle overlaps the rectangle, then we should set fill to be RGB. Otherwise, we should set fill to be RGB. So we're going to set it to red if it's overlapping, green otherwise, then we'll draw our circles. All right, let's get into our public, our method. We're going to again do a Boolean like we've done in other kind of rectangle overlapping videos. I'll give a little more description here if you haven't watched those. But basically, this method is designed to send back a true or false value, checking to see whether this thing is true or not, whether our circle is overlapping the rectangle. What we need to do here, let's say I'm going to make a variable. I'm going to make a variable called closest x. How about closest x on rectangle? Hopefully, it's a descriptive enough name. Float closest y on rectangle. For our closest x on rectangle, we're going to use the constrain function, and we're going to say this is where we're going to use our circle x, and then we're going to do our rectangle x, and we're going to do our rectangle x plus rectangle width. That's going to be our closest value on for the x. We're going to do the same thing. I'm going to copy and paste this down in here. We're going to do constrain for our circle y, for our rectangle y, and then for our rectangle y plus rectangle height. And then basically, so this is getting us a point. This is getting us an x and y coordinate that is on the rectangle that's closest to the circle. Now all we need to do is we just need to check if the distance between closest x on rectangle, closest y on rectangle, circle x, and circle y, all those values are less than the radius of the circle. The radius of the circle is going to be its size divided by 2. If that's true, that means that there is an overlap, and we're going to return true back to whoever's using this method. Otherwise, we're going to return false. No, it's not overlapping. Now, if we go up into our code, we can see all this. Constantly checking to see if that's true. If it is true, we're going to change our fill to be red. Otherwise, we're going to leave the fill to be green. So now if we run that, we get this thing, and as soon as it touches, oh, red, not red, red, not red, red, not red. So that's how we're going to do this one. So hopefully I went into enough detail about kind of what constraint is doing and why that's useful. If that wasn't enough, you really should think about maybe drawing this out, think about different locations on your rectangle. What would it look like for the circle and rectangle to be touching? What would be our coordinates there? And how can we really check that? This is a really interesting tool for using this, and so hopefully you found that helpful.